It's your girl, Queen of Coco, back in the social media streets, ready to discuss Baddies USA, the season premiere. This is part three of this series where we're breaking down the social dynamics and the controversy surrounding the return of the founders, um, the OGs from Bad Girls Club, who, I mean, there seems to be something going on because we haven't really seen them, many of them besides Jayla and a few of them, regularly on the show, but now we see them all. So if you missed part one laid the foundation far as what was happening on season one. um, I laid the foundation, not said season one, but on episode one or part one, I laid the foundation as far as what was happening between Natalie and the founders, the level of disrespect, and I addressed the parallel of how Zeus presented Tanisha and presented Natalie with all the founders in between. We saw that Natalie got her own separate interest, as she should, the baddie CEO, who we've been seeing season after season. And then, interestingly enough, Tanisha arrives with her bodyguards, and Natalie's ops are waiting so graciously for her. So it made me say, is there something that we do not know? Because why is it that Tanisha has returned at this particular time? Because I do not believe in coincidences. And is there some type of dispute in the background that we're not aware of? So, thank you for joining me for this AI deep dive because we're going to dive deep. I did on part two start with the first set of questions. So, if you missed it, you'll want to go back and watch part one, part two, especially if you feel a little lost on the questions that I'm asking, and why I'm seeking the particular answers. So, picking up from where we left off, AI gave pretty much the background, and related legal issues in regards to, um, if there was any ongoing disputes where Natalie was being possibly sued or Zeus was being sued. Because I asked that question because I was thinking that I know that Natalie doesn't mess with all those so-called founders like that. So why would they all of a sudden be on the show? And she wasn't ready for their arrival. She was quite on the defense, which we discussed persuasion, Bree, Sarah, several of the opposite and everyone in between where you kind of don't really know where they stand. She did have a little bit of a crew, which was Jayla, Low London, you know, but for the most part, we know that she does not mess with them like that. So here's what AI had to say. They said that there are no known public lawsuits filed by Bad Girls Club cast members against Natalie Nunn or the Zeus Network, specifically over who created the Baddies concept itself. However, the Zeus Network has faced other legal challenges. Right now, I'm not concerned with those legal challenges because they have nothing to do with the discussion of what we're trying to break down today, which is, if Natalie and the other ladies are having some dispute over the rights, because we did see Bree challenge her on the Batty Shot O'Clock and who created it. Which, if you want to know my opinion on it, you'll need to go to part two because I did speak briefly on that. But basically, it's like the founders are coming out of the woodwork in order to kind of address Natalie because they're displeased about, I guess, how it's progressed without them being present. That's just my opinion. And child, personally, I would feel some kind of way too after that Baddies Africa episode. The lady, the lady then took the new OGs to Africa, setting a tone. So I wouldn't be mad. I mean, it's kind of, now if I created something and I was kind of cut out, but I don't know if that's the case. However, as I discussed, Natalie made a deal based on what AI is saying, based off of her time on BGC, and the direction of Baddies has been left to Natalie along with Lemuel. We haven't seen the other founders. So it really is, um, I don't know, interesting that the founders have appeared on this season. The AI does mention the Viacom lawsuit. They also mentioned the other co-founders, alleged co-founders of Zeus. But the most interesting thing that stood out to me as a part of the background that they wanted to mention in terms of the tension at Zeus Network was this. It was centered around production conflicts. It says Natalie Nunn had a public on-set conflict with Zeus CEO Lemuel Plummer during the filming of Baddies Africa, where she claimed he held her hostage and questioned whose show it was, hinting at an internal power struggle. I said, if AI is not on, if y'all want to say that AI don't know what it knows what it know. Because that's one thing that I was wondering when we all watched it and we seen it kind of go viral for the moment where her and Lemmy was into it. And, she kind of left the set and it had to do with, well, it don't matter about what it had to do with. But I think it's interesting that that's pointing that out because it makes you wonder, did that conflict really get resolved? And if it did not get resolved, is that the reason why Tanisha Thomas was brought back along with the rest of the founders? Are they no longer getting along? Or are they semi getting along? Or is this some light orchestration by the network to make Natalie uncomfortable and to possibly explore other options with taking Baddies in a different direction? Now, do I think that that would be wise? I don't. I do think Natalie, as I said, has her own energy. As with the other cast members, Tanisha was memorable as well from taking them pants and working all them ladies up. I don't know if it's the same glamorous appeal that Natalie lends to the show. To me, Tanisha, as you can see, I have her on the screen. She's a beautiful face, beautiful woman. But it's two different looks, two different aesthetics, and two different demeanors for where the Baddies brand is now. All of them, I guess, are bad girls in a sense, but Baddies, I don't know. If you get what I'm trying to say, leave a comment below. What I'm trying to say is that Baddies, is a little bit different from just BGC, where you just basically have a bad attitude, like to argue, like to fight. You do have that, but it is also about the girlies and how they're looking, what they're giving. Um, it's a little different definition, today's definition of a baddie. And I'm not saying Tanisha is not a baddie. I'm just saying there is kind of two different lanes. So basically, I just thought it was very interesting that Zeus, that AI mentions the fallout or the fact Natalie's accusation against Lemmy during the Baddies Africa, that is the previous season, in regards to the tensions that are going on in the background. So it makes me wonder about that relationship. So the other thing is that basically, as I mentioned earlier on part two, AI does say that Tanisha Thomas is a co-creator. So this would make sense as the reason why she got her separate entrance, uh, aside from the other cast members, and why it would appear, or Zeus is making it appear, that her and Natalie are on the same level. That's just what it gave. Although we haven't seen Tanisha, you know. So I asked AI, I said my next question was, so if Tanisha Thomas is also a co-creator, does she have the same equitable power as Natalie? And this is what AI answered. It says, Although Tanisha Thomas and Natalie Nunn were both credited as executive producers on the initial season, Baddies ATL, it does not appear that Tanisha has the same level of power as Natalie. But the way it came off on the show, and Natalie kind of did this herself by getting up and walking out as the baddie CEO when Tanisha arrived. If Tanisha truly doesn't have the same power, which I'm really questioning the power that Natalie has, if it is her hands are tied to some extent, depending on um, her contract with Zeus and that she sold the rights totally. I know what AI is saying, but how Zeus kind of presented it on the season premiere Baddies, it looked like that their power was somewhat equitable. Although, no offense to Tanisha, I do feel like Natalie has built that Baddies brand since Atlanta, and I don't think that their power should be equitable. That's just me. AI further breaks down and it talks about the key differences in their roles and power dynamics. And this is how AI is analyzing um, the level of power that each one should have. It says, while both were credited as executive producers on Baddies ATL, Tanisha's involvement appears to have been less hands on. So I just said that. And AI is also saying it. Some former castmates and observers have suggested that Natalie was more focused on production, while Tanisha's role seemed more performative. I don't know if that's true. If it's not true and you know better, comment below. But I'm just telling you what the AI says. We haven't seen Tanisha though, child. Maybe she was in the background somehow through all these seasons and episodes, but we haven't synced her. Okay? That's all I'm saying. It goes on to say that after Baddies ATL, Tanisha Thomas departed the series and did not return as a cast member or executive producer for subsequent seasons. So she wasn't a cast member. She was an executive producer. So this is what I'm saying about them not coming together and play fair. Okay, maybe if we want to say allegedly that they all came up with the concept together, okay, we could give that part. Maybe. Because I really don't know. However, who's driven the brand to what it is now has been Natalie. So what I don't understand, the disconnect for me in regards to the founders is even if you have a problem with the initial, how things happen initially, you're still not giving the woman her credit for sustaining what you guys came up together initially, if that's the case. And where she's taking it from the initial discussion or idea of Baddies to where it is now. Now, we don't know what happened in the background. If they were prevented, I really don't know. Nevertheless, the brand that we see now is kind of based off of Natalie's leadership and energy, although we see a lot of the new OGs coming for her. But it's just like any employment. People always come for the queen. They always think that they can do the job of the queen because they want to be in that position. Now, when I'm looking back on this, on the previous episodes, even with the stuff with Rolly and DTB, although I don't think DTB was quite doing it like Rolly, some of the things that were alleged, when you start saying, oh, that person not doing their job, I'm doing their job, that kind of makes me think, was that somewhat of undermining at that time, where they could see that there was some tension in the background with Natalie and people were trying to figure out how to slide in that position. If that's the case, like on Belly, I don't like this. I don't like that. I That's not the way to go about rising and getting ahead. I just It'll take you only so far. That's what I'm gonna say. So anyway, it goes on to say, it also points out what I just said, Natalie's ongoing influence. And it says Natalie Nunn has maintained a visible and central role in the Baddies franchise, including audition hours and judging panels. Her consistent involvement over the years has established her as the dominant creative and on screen force behind the series. So AI is calling Natalie the dominant creator. That being said, they're not saying that Tanisha is not a creator. They're just saying that she has been the dominant creator that has been on screen and present and in the orchestration, the production on and off screen. The next thing it goes on to is talking about the recent conflicts where it says the on-screen drama in Baddies USA involving Tanisha and Natalie highlights the power imbalance. Natalie's hostile reaction to Tanisha's reentry suggests a perceived threat to her status as the face of the show. Now, child, I'm just saying, just saying, why would she perceive her as a threat if Zeus is not working with Tanisha in such a way? Something not right. I don't know what, but it's something in the background. There's something it feels like that Natalie has no control of or no say over. And I'm wondering, did Zeus bring Tanisha and the rest of those founders in order to start phasing maybe Natalie out? If they do, I don't think it's going to be a good business call. It will not be the same. It wouldn't be the same, and it wouldn't be right. It's given what happened to Mariah Huck with Married to Medicine, where she sold her show and then got put off her own show. I really hope that doesn't happen to her. I mean, I just, to me, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. I hope it don't happen to her. So then I asked AI, so if this is the case, why would Natalie be threatened by the power that Tanisha, what did I say? Why would Natalie be threatened by Tanisha because of a power that she really doesn't have? And AI responded that it's a nuanced situation where the perception of power rather than the reality of ownership is likely the driving factor for the tension. Even if Tanisha doesn't have equitable power, Natalie may feel threatened for several reasons relating to the optics, how it looks, related to the optics of the business, and it ain't looking good. It goes on to say Tanisha's popularity and legitimacy. Tanisha Thomas is arguably as iconic and influential in Bad Girls Club legacy as Natalie Nunn. And I did say, with her waking up people up with them pants, she was a memorable character. Where I said on part two, whereas many of those founders, many of them I just didn't remember. Between her and Natalie, they were iconic for their time on BGC. Hence why, along with her being a co-creator for Baddies ATL, maybe why, and if Natalie's not getting along with Lemuel, they have brought Tanisha back on the season. AI says she brings significant OG credibility and a massive fan base that could easily shift allegiance if given the chance. And I need to know what the audience thinks. Could she shift that allegiance? Would you be more loyal to Tanisha if she took it from here? Or would you stay loyal to Natalie? Or did you just never like Natalie and it doesn't matter? I might put a little poll up, but drop a comment, help the channel grow, please, and let me know your thoughts and opinions. It goes on to say, Natalie may be concerned that Tanisha's return could diminish her own status as the sole face on the new franchise. I don't think it would diminish her own status with her returning, although it does raise some questions because I feel like it's two different fan bases. personally. You got a common fan base, which is BGC, but in terms of baddies, I think between Tanisha and Natalie is two different fan bases. And it goes on, AI further notes that in reality TV, leverage often depends on perceived importance and fan appeal. Natalie might be worried that Tanisha's presence would make her appear less indispensable to the Zeus network executives. And it's given that. It's given why? Why now? Is there something going on? And I mean, I'm hoping that this is just all for drama to give us something to talk about. Like Reba said, it's giving us, was it Reba, child? Anyway, it's giving us something to talk about. Maybe that's all that it is. But at the same time, it's so much going on this season already in this part one that I don't know. I don't know. AI further points out that Natalie has tightly controlled the show's direction and the narrative around its creation for several seasons now. Tanisha Return introduces an unpredictable element and a competing perspective on the show's origin, potentially challenging Natalie's authority on and off screen. And we see that she is challenging Natalie's authority because the baddie CEO herself leaves when Tanisha shows up. And I feel like as the CEO, you should be scared of anyone. And if you're saying you're not scared, it is giving that. Even if you're saying you don't want to be bothered, if you can't sit there and take the heat. And that might be where they get you at. So you need to be able to stand up, stand your ground for how you've held down at least the show since Baddies ATL. So I'm going to wrap this up because I don't have too many more minutes. I didn't mean for it to be this long. But we're going to talk about what AI says about Zeus Network's role in all of this. Basically, or ultimately, as AI says, the Zeus Network owns the Baddies trademark and the rights to the show. They can decide who gets producers' credits, screen time, and a say in the show's direction. Their primary goal is viewership and revenue. So I don't believe that Natalie had a say in bringing all these founders back, but I believe maybe Tanisha did. So now it's just making me wonder, what's the future direction going to be for Baddies? The other thing it says is that the network benefits from this type of internal conflict. They likely encourage the tension between the two stars because it drives engagement and subscription signups. And I believe it would because there's two different fan bases. They probably have gathered all of Tanisha's fans. And in conclusion, Natalie's feeling of being threatened likely stems from a desire to maintain absolute control and star power in a competitive environment. And it looks as indeed competitive. Rather than a direct legal threat to her producer title. The underlying business of the Zeus Network thrives on this exact kind of high drama power struggle. So, Chow, we're gonna leave this right here. I got one more minute. There's one thing I did one last thing I want to mention. I did ask it. So could Zeus give Tanisha Thomas control and cut Natalie out? Or would it depend on their contract? And I'm gonna leave this right here. If you want the answer to that, we're gonna join me in part 4 as we finish this on out, and then we got some other things to talk about. Anyways, I'll holla.